Hello, 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 football fans. We are back with another ranking. This time we'll be talking about quarterbacks, fantasy quarterbacks, the top 32. We're going to run through all the teams here. Every single team's quarterback, fantasy wise, helping you win a championship in your league. But first off, hope everyone's doing well. Truly. I'm not just saying that. Hope everyone's having a great day. And with that being said, let's just jump right into these rankings so we can win y'all a fantasy championship. Number 32, we got Kyler Murray, and only really because he is listed as the starter of this team. There are other guys that are right behind him that will be playing because he is injured. He tore his ACL I believe last December, maybe last January. He is likely to come back after, I don't know, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. But I actually saw a report today that said that he might just miss the whole season in an effort for the Cardinals to tank for the top pick. So, talking about guys like Colt McCoy and Clayton Tune. We all know Colt McCoy, what he's done. He's a journeyman in this league. Clayton Tune from Houston, a rookie. What I've seen of him hasn't been that great. He hasn't played a single snap in the NFL. He doesn't have much pedigree compared to these other rookie quarterbacks. So Kyler Murray, even when he comes back, is going to be incredibly rusty. This entire QB situation in Arizona looks to be pretty ugly. So Kyler Murray, listen, he's on this list. He's an NFL quarterback when healthy. I think he's a good player. I'm a bigger fan of his maybe than other folks. But because it's a fantasy season, so if you miss a significant amount of time, you are, especially because the season is cut short in fantasy. It's not a regular season. You know, you're entering playoffs in week 14 in some leagues, so or maybe even week 13. So Kyler Murray and the whole Cardinals quarterback room at number 32. Moving to number 31, we got Baker Mayfield, the guy that has a second chance in the league, playing with, or actually not even a second chance. This would be his third team because he went to the Rams, had an amazing first game, and then didn't finish out the season well. Or Matt Stafford came back, or something like that. But he's getting another chance here somehow. No, actually, he played in Carolina as well. This is his fourth chance, and he is still starting on his fourth team after being kicked off of two or three other teams, essentially. Beat out Kyle Trask. So good for him for that. Of course, I'm going to list positives and negatives of all these guys here. Positives, he is an NFL worthy quarterback that did do well in Cleveland for a time. I think the good things about him, I think he is somewhat clutch, I would say. I think that's a positive attribute of his. I like that he's kind of like a 6 foot, maybe slightly sub 6 foot guy that has a lot of tenacity and has an arm for sure. But the issue is that he's not accurate with that arm many times. I remember with the Cardinals last year, how many times he overthrew DJ Moore and all the other receivers on that team. And some of the passes that he threw just looked Lamar Jackson like. If you want a little preview into what's coming in this ranking, he's just not accurate, and he doesn't have a lot of the tools. But he is a scrappy guy. He won this job, and he's going to be playing with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He has some good weapons. He has Rashad White as well, who is, while not a great running back, he is a good pass catcher. So Baker Mayfield at 31. At number 30, we have Bryce Young. And I know this might be a surprise to some of you. However, when you don't play a single snap in the NFL, of course, I'm going to keep the rookies very low on this list because college is not the same as the NFL. You need to see how they play in the NFL first before you're able to really ascend them into a lot of these rankings. Preseason isn't really enough. To me, based on what I've seen in these first two preseason games, 2 out of the 3 preseason games, I don't know in the third preseason game. I don't think the starters are going to play. So Bryce Young has been the least impressive of the rookie quarterbacks that were taken in the first round that I've seen. He is small, obviously. I mean that's not news to anybody. But also he doesn't seem sure of himself, and maybe he's not sure of himself yet. Maybe that is to come. However, if I'm listing positives, of course, this guy has incredible pedigree. If you had watched my reel on Instagram about Bryce Young, you'll know that throughout his entire life, he has been the best quarterback at every level of his life, from Pee Wee to high school to college, and by a good level. And he's been overcoming odds, so he has that. He has that experience to draw back from. However, this is a new level. This is a new level. This is the toughest level. And so far, he has not looked great. And also, his weapons are horrible. You're talking about Adam Thielen, a very washed up Adam Thielen. DJ Chark. DJ Chark is supposed to be their number one receiver. That might be the worst number one receiver in the league. So really what you're counting on is Jonathan Mingo as a rookie receiver being good or being serviceable. So maybe he throws to Miles Sanders sometimes. We'll see. I'm not a huge fan of Miles Sanders either. So Bryce Young is going to have to prove himself here, but from what I've seen so far, he is at number 30. Moving to number 29, we got C.J. Stroud. He is another guy that went right behind Bryce Young, a rookie quarterback. I'm going to keep these rookie quarterbacks low because I haven't seen them play against NFL competition, or at least the ones. The good things I've seen from him. His improvement from week 1 of the preseason to week 2 of the preseason. He did get better. He is more composed, and I can see some of the composure and fluidness of a lot of his throws. So he looks like that guy from Ohio State, and some of it is starting to translate a little bit. I still do question some of his decision making. Obviously, he's the guy that said coming out of the combine that he did terrible on those intellectual tests that they give. And he said, I'm a football player. I don't need to be smart, essentially, or intelligent. And that's far from the truth when you're a quarterback. So I foresee him, if he does not, focus on his acumen, his QB acumen, and it's just such a complex games, and the best defensive coordinators, the best minds are in the NFL, and they're going to find a way to, frazzle this guy and give him a lot of issues if he is not consistently using his head to find ways to crack defenses. And when you don't value that aspect of football, the intelligence aspect of football, especially as a quarterback, I think you may struggle. We saw that in week 1. I think he got a little bit better in week 2, but I can't put him any higher than number 29. So number 29, C.J. Stroud. Number 28, we have Anthony Richardson, a guy that I think, obviously, as you can see here, the best of those 3 quarterbacks that were taken high in the draft. This is another guy that had a very difficult week 1, although he did show flashes of being mobile, obviously. I think he had some of the best metrics in terms of physical metrics, speed, strength, jumping ability, all those sorts of things in the combine, maybe ever. I think he set records for that. In week 1, he showed that athleticism, but he did throw a really bad pick. In week 2 of the preseason, I saw significant growth. I see a lot of composure, and he's built well, and he is pretty decisive, more decisive than Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud from what I've seen. And of course, he has that physical aspect to him, the ability to run, the ability to move around, more so than Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. His weapons, of course, not that great, but you do have Michael Pittman. That's more than Stroud and Bryce Young have. So you do have a weapon there, and I noticed something about him as well, that might prevent him from throwing more picks is he does that thing that Cam Newton and Tom Brady did, which is he is throwing the ball a little bit lower to his receivers so that the ball doesn't have the opportunity to get tipped and picked. So, of course, obviously, very different results, Cam Newton and Tom Brady. However, I believe that instead of throwing it a little bit higher or at the numbers, throwing it a little bit lower into the breadbasket, into a place where the ball can't get tipped and it's more difficult to intercept, there is some wisdom to that. So I like that he does that. So if he continues to excel, I think that he can be great. He is a guy that has really shot up my rankings relative to what I thought. I thought he might be the worst quarterback in the league, and I think he has an opportunity to ascend. But like I said, I'm keeping these rookies a little bit lower here to begin because they have not experienced real number one NFL defenses. So Anthony Richardson, number 28. Number 27, we have Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Now, judging by my criteria here, he is probably the worst of the quarterbacks that have some experience, and that's what you're going to see as well. As we move up this list, having more experience and having more success in the NFL will land you higher on this list because you know what you're doing and you have already had success. But Jordan Love, what I've seen from him so far, he is not the heir apparent to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. He does not look great to me. I am not a big fan of their receivers, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, nor am I particularly a big fan of their aging running backs and A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. He does have a good coach for a quarterback. I will give that to him as a positive. So he will be more receptive, of course, to Matt LaFleur, more so than Aaron Rodgers was, and I know Matt LaFleur is extremely excited about that. So we will see possibly, I think the ceiling for this guy is the Jared Goff that we saw in Los Angeles with the Rams because he's essentially the mind of Sean McVay. So, or what we saw with Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo or really anybody you put in there because it's the mind of the coach that is being inserted into the quarterback essentially. So that's about the only positives I can give to Jordan Love because his play, not exceptional to me. Don't have high expectations of him. Jordan Love at number 27. Moving into number 26 here, we have Desmond Ridder of the Falcons. He is finally getting an opportunity to play this season. The Marcus Mariota experiment failed last year, unfortunately. However, he does have an attribute of Marcus Mariota, which is he does not have much of an arm at all. He throws the ball very soft. He does not have a lot of velocity on his throws. Now, he does have a little bit of touch. And as I move into some of the positives here, I do like the potential of some of his weapons, obviously. When you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London, guys that were there before that Marcus Mariota couldn't really utilize, but they have tremendous skill, Kyle Pitts especially. And you have Bijan, who is not only a great runner, but a great pass catcher. And he's very young now, so he's going to have a lot of tread on those tires. And you have Tyler Algier, who I was a big fan of basically just on the ground to help him out. So he has a lot of those good weapons. And he does have some, from what I saw from him, he is fairly accurate. But he's going to have to increase some of the velocity on some of his throws. This is something that, going back to, I believe, last year, and we're going to get to him a little bit later, but Aaron Rodgers just lost a little bit of velocity, and when that happens, you are more likely to throw interceptions, especially on deep balls. So Desmond Ridder, I can see him excelling in 10 yards or less, essentially, maybe 15 yards or less. But on deep balls, I do see him throwing a good number of interceptions because he has sort of a weak arm from what I've seen. So Desmond Ridder at number 26. Number 25, we have Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. This is a guy that has been really impressing me over as you review his tape from last year and into the first couple weeks of this year in the preseason. He looks like an elevated Baker Mayfield physically, and maybe even in the way he plays, the way Baker Mayfield played at his pinnacle is similar to what I see of Sam Howell, and Sam Howell might be even a little bit better. He is a little bit undersized, and he's playing in or on a team that historically just hasn't been run very, very well, doesn't have great luck. I know they have new ownership. I don't know how long it's going to take for the culture to change there. But Howell, when you watch him play, he is decisive. He is a little bit mobile, but he is a little bit undersized. That's the only issue there. And he can break out from that. Obviously, I'm not of the mind that just because you're undersized that you can't excel. Look at Russell Wilson. Look at a lot of these guys. Even Kyler Murray, when he's healthy, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So the reason why he's at 25 here is because there's just not enough tape. I think he's only started one or two games in the NFL, maybe only one against the Cowboys last year. So there's just not enough tape there. But he has the potential to really skyrocket up this list. So Sam Howell, I have at number 25. At number 24, we have Kenny Pickett, a guy that has been shooting up a lot of fantasy football experts list. I didn't see much of him. I didn't see a lot of things last year from him that would cause me to put him any higher than this. In the preseason, I have seen marginal improvement, but not on the level that would put him any higher than 24. He does look the part, absolutely. He does have weapons, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and really, if you don't use George Pickens more this year, Steelers, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing? A lot of people are pigeonholing this guy as just a guy that makes incredible catches, and he is the incredible catch guy. What is that? I don't really understand why people are saying that. Deontay Johnson, he's been given he's the number one receiver on this team, but he has been given chances to excel, and he hasn't really taken them. So the George Pickens to Pickett connection, I remember, was very strong last year. So the more you can get the ball to Pickens and drop those plays and set Pickens as the number one guy, I think the more success Pickett is going to have. He's a little bit of a wild card. I know he didn't start every game last year. He does have a lot more experience than these other guys on this list, say for maybe Baker Mayfield. It's a little bit of a wild card here. He has good upside, but from what I saw last year, I wasn't incredibly impressed. So 24 suits him. Kenny Pickett at 24. At 23, Lamar Jackson. Listen, I know this is going to be the controversial one. If you've listened to this podcast at all, you know I am not a fan of Lamar Jackson, and I am not a fan of the way that his game as a quarterback is going to age in the league. He is a fantastic runner. He is a reckless runner. He doesn't slide, and that's why he's been injured so much. But his skills as a pure passer, it's a connection with Mark Andrews. It's dump offs to running backs. It's finding space. It's really what he does is he scares the defense into thinking that he's going to run because he has a potential to run. And then really he just finds easy targets within 5 to 10 yards. But if you really break down his mechanics as a thrower and how many passes to wide open receivers he's missed, he is killing the career of Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman should be one of the elite receivers in the league. And now they're getting, Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers, who they're saying is flying in practice and a lot of these games as well. So maybe those will inflate some of his stats. Maybe you do quick throws to Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers does the rest with his speed, or maybe you do quick slants to Odell Beckham, who really that's how he made his name in the NFL. Rashad Bateman, I'm sorry, I mean the skill set of Rashad Bateman is a deep threat, is a clear number one receiver, and Lamar Jackson doesn't have the skill set to get Rashad Bateman the ball. So Lamar Jackson, one of those guys, I could see him getting injured again because of the reckless style that he plays. He is not an accurate passer, and once his legs go, his career is going to end quickly. And I'm sorry to say it. You don't like to see that, but it's just something that I foresee is going to happen. So at number 23, Lamar Jackson and Baltimore, you guys were dumb to pay him. I'm sorry. Number 22, we got Mac Jones of the New England Patriots, a guy that is on a little bit of shaky ground here with his job simply because Bill Belichick is a little bit enigmatic. He's a little impatient. He's coming off Tom Brady, who is the greatest quarterback of all time. He doesn't know what to do now that he has average quarterback play, and that's what I feel about Mac Jones, really. I think he's below average, really, relative to the rest of the league. Some weird thing about him, I noticed that he wears shoulder pads and a uniform that is too big for him. I think he needs to get a tighter fit because he looks kind of bulky out there. But he has those standard quarterback mechanics that are made for the NFL, was great at Alabama. His weapons in Devontae Parker, Juju Smith, they're getting Juju. I think that is an improvement maybe over what they had last year. Those can be good. But the downside is he doesn't follow through on a lot of his passes. He's not exceptionally mobile. There's just nothing to be excited about this guy. And the players behind him, Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham. Malik Cunningham, by the way, could and should really be or given the chance to be a starting quarterback in this league. He looked very good in the preseason. But Mac Jones here, I'm putting him right above Lamar Jackson just because I'm not a fan of Lamar. And Mac Jones, of course, is the only guy really here other than Baker Mayfield that has had a full season to play quarterback, other than, of course, Lamar Jackson, like I mentioned. But really, other than that, he's not that great. And he might lose his job, admittedly. But he does have a quarterback set. I think if he does lose his job in New England, he'll probably find a job somewhere else, but nothing exceptional about him. Mac Jones at number 22. Number 21, we have Matthew Stafford here, a guy that is coming off an injury, a guy that is, of course, quite old relative to the rest of the league. He is in that Aaron Rodgers tier. I think he's maybe the only quarterback that is, or he's Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's the only starting quarterback that is older than him. He has elbow issues, obviously, but until he shows that he is no longer going to be able to play in the NFL, he is still extremely, extremely talented. He has great quarterback skills, has great acumen, can throw the no-look passes, has Cooper Kupp on his team, who is top 5 wide receiver, maybe top 3 if he stays healthy. He had a hamstring injury in the preseason or in training camp. He is back from that, and Cooper Kupp is one of those guys that I would trust to be very diligent in his recovery and in his comeback. So, out of respect for Matthew Stafford and what I know he can be when he's healthy, and if he is healthy, then Matthew Stafford is properly placed here at number 21. At number 20, we have the guy that, from my old team, used to play for my team, for the Seahawks, Russell Wilson. This guy has had extremely, extremely bad luck with the Broncos so far. And to think he could have still been on the Seahawks, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Russell. when you talk about his receivers this offseason, KJ Hamler, he is out on, or I think they waived him because he has a heart condition. So best of luck to KJ Hamler. Tim Patrick, who is one of their best receivers, tore his Achilles, out for the season. I think today or maybe a couple of days ago, Jerry Jeudy was carted off of practice with a hamstring injury. They say he's going to miss several weeks. So really all you have now is Cortland Sutton and Mims. I'm not sure which Mims it is, but I mean that's your second receiver. Cortland Sutton, I think, has a little bit of skill, but hasn't really been able to put it all together. And I don't think he's the ideal receiver for Russell Wilson. The receivers Russell Wilson excels with are who he excelled with in Seattle. Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, the guys that can make plays out of nothing. And that's what Jerry Jeudy kind of was. So losing Jerry Jeudy for those few weeks is gonna come to the detriment of Russell Wilson. Now he finally has the quarterback he's always wanted in Sean Payton. But Sean Payton is kind of a hard ass, and he is not going to allow Russell Wilson to have his own QB coach. He may not allow him to have that office that he had when the Broncos' previous coach was there. So it can really go either way. In the preseason, Russell Wilson has looked better. He has slimmed down. He looks good, but also when you look at Javonte Williams, I mean, even this guy is very hesitant coming back from injury. He would have been a great weapon for him. So maybe Javonte comes into form eventually, trusts his knee more. Maybe Jerry Jeudy has an expedited return date. Maybe he comes back in week 2 or week 3. That's the ideal scenario for Russell Wilson. We all know Russell Wilson possibly on a Hall of Fame trajectory based on what he did in Seattle and still on the back end of his prime, possibly. I know he had a terrible season last year, but could be on the back end of his prime. He has proven people wrong before. I'm a fan of Russell Wilson, but I need to see it. Russell Wilson, number 20. Moving to number 19, we got Jimmy G. The star Jimmy Garoppolo of the Las Vegas Raiders. A very complex career Jimmy has had with the Niners and the Patriots, and then him finally ending up here. Has a bit of an injury history. I mean, that's very clear. That is really why he has continued to move from team to team. He does do this weird thing when pressure is on him. He tries to throw the ball and then turn around and just kind of fall on the floor, try to protect himself in a very kind of scared type of way, self-preservation, because he has been injured a lot. So really, can you really blame him that much? The positives, he's playing with Davante Adams, who is the best wide receiver in the league. I don't care what anyone says about Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp. They're all great, and they fill out probably the rest of the top 5. But Davante Adams is number 1 as both a catcher of the ball in running routes, and especially what sets him apart as number 1 is the effort he gives after he catches the ball, the yak. He really cares about that, even as an elite number 1 receiver. The running back position for this team is in flux. Josh Jacobs, they say he's going to come back, hasn't been back. Zamir White, I think he has some potential, but really who knows? He hasn't played a snap in the NFL yet. And the other guys on this roster, they lost Waller. They got Michael Mayer. He's a rookie tight end. A lot of unknowns on this team. Matt Collins. We'll see. Really, the reason why he's this high, he has pedigree. He has played in the Super Bowl. He has the potential, and he has Davante Adams. And Josh McDaniel, of course, is supposedly the QB whisperer, or architected, those offenses of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. So there is some hope there for him. So Jimmy Garoppolo at number 19. Number 18, we got Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. And I know he's at 18 here, not quite the middle of the pack, but around the NFL has something called the Dalton scale, which is the prime meridian of quarterbacks. And if you have anybody that is above this guy, he is a franchise QB. And if you have anyone below him, then they're not franchise QBs. This is the guy. He is right there in the middle. He is solid. He has, you don't really have to worry about him really breaking things apart and destroying your team, but he's not going to be exceptional. And the Titans continue to draft quarterbacks the past 2 years, Malik Willis and Will Levis, both of which who seem to be pretty terrible. I mean, Malik Willis was maybe the worst quarterback I've ever seen last year in his time. And they're saying, according to reports, that Will Levis can't even beat Malik Willis out in practice. So really, you're going to have to go with Ryan Tannehill here, who is good and who just got DeAndre Hopkins as a weapon, to go with Treylon Burks and to go with their tight end, who has a difficult name to pronounce, who is also good. And of course, you got Derrick Henry and you got Tyjae Spears, who can be a great 1-2 punch at running back. They have weapons. They have Mike Vrabel, who is a great defensive coach. The infrastructure around Ryan Tannehill will likely allow him or propel him to succeed. The only thing about him is, of course, he's a little bit older, and he could get injured. And that's what happened to him last year, why they had to go and find Josh Dobbs and these other guys that couldn't play, Malik Willis. But Ryan Tannehill at number 18, I think properly placed. Number 17, we got Daniel Jones of the New York Giants, the guy that just got paid, the guy that is gaining weapons, got Darren Waller. Saquon was healthy all of last year. That's an exception. I like their other tight end here. His name escapes me now, but he is also quite good. Darius Slayton, I think he is a really underrated guy. I think he can be a tremendous possession receiver. I think he could be a great number 2 or number 3 receiver on a great, great elite team. Jalen Hyatt, I guess we'll see. He looks to be a little bit of a speedster. But their coach, Brian Daboll, he just kind of makes things happen. I mean, we saw last year. They really overperformed as a team. Daniel Jones is extremely athletic. Extremely, extremely athletic. He is one of the fastest quarterbacks in the league, something you wouldn't expect from a guy in his frame. And the way he moves is actually not only just, north-south, but also east-west. Of course, I say that to say in the Barry Sanders type of east-west, he is very mobile, moving back and forth, and his footwork is quite good. And with better weapons this year, I think that he has the ability to continue to ascend if he worked this offseason on eliminating some of the bad throws and the tentativeness and things that kept us from thinking that Daniel Jones could be a top of the top half of the league quarterback. So at number 17, Daniel Jones. At number 16, we got Brock Purdy. And I know what I said before about basically ranking these players based on how much experience they have in the league, and more experience, the higher I'll put them on this list. And that is mostly the rule here, but this is the exception because Brock Purdy was essentially perfect in playing what did he play? Maybe a quarter of the games, a quarter of the season last year. Maybe he played 6 games or so, 7 games. But he was perfect. I think he had a perfect record, maybe I think 6 or 7-0, until he got injured. And what was supposed to be a serious injury, but he's coming back early, it seems, from it. He is just extremely solid, and he is another guy that is in that mold of, he looks like Baker Mayfield, Sam Howell. They just kind of look the same physically. I'm not saying that they play the same. I'm just saying they look the same physically. And Brock Purdy is like the top level of that. And then you have like the 2 other levels. It's Brock Purdy here, Sam Howell, and then Baker Mayfield. on a great offense with Shanahan. And what he showed last year, his proclivity to make the right throw, he has that acumen. He has that QB acumen that you're looking for. And as a Seahawks supporter, I hate it because he seems to be just a really, really smart quarterback. The downside's just maybe his frame and the fact that he's just coming back from an injury. There's for some reason a lot of talk about these other quarterbacks in San Francisco with Sam Darnold and even Trey Lance now. I don't get it. Just go with Brock Purdy. He seems to be, even though these other guys, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, were drafted so much higher in the draft than him. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft. You just got to go with this guy. You got to go you got to go based on merit. He is the best quarterback on this team. And the reason why he's not number 16 and not higher than this is because he hasn't played a full season. So we don't really know what he's going to do against all of the talent in the league. But he could ascend up this list, unfortunately for me as a Seahawks fan, like I mentioned. Moving on to number 15. We got Jared Goff, who ended last year with a ton of momentum and a guy that is near and dear to my heart because of what he did to the Packers and getting the Seahawks into the playoffs. He has had a roller coaster of a career. Starting with Jeff Fisher, he was awful, really, really bad. And then Sean McVay came in and revived his career, talking into his ear and basically feeding him the plays. He was Sean McVay on the field, essentially. But then as that wore on and defenses adapted to it, he really started to become below average, not great. We started to see some of his flaws. And then he was traded to the Lions for Matt Stafford because Matt Stafford is better in every way than him other than age. And he started in Detroit just kind of okay. But what he did at the end of last season, that the second half of last season, he is just like locked in. He is locked in. And I like his weapons as well. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like, now he has Jahmyr Gibbs. I like the Lions tight end. His name is escaping me as well. But he just finds ways to find his receivers. They have David Montgomery now as well. I think he's going to be a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He is now coming back into that, that really good form that he had with Sean McVay for a while. So you got to give him respect. He did get to a Super Bowl, played there as well. So number 15, Jared Goff. And number 14, possibly a controversial one here, Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints. I am higher on Derek Carr than a lot of people. I think he has good attributes for a quarterback. I think he is an accurate passer of the ball. And I think there is something that he does that is interestingly the opposite of what I described Cam Newton and Anthony Richardson and Tom Brady doing, which is throwing it low. He throws it high, but higher than where you would get an interception. He throws it in a place where you get defensive pass interference calls. So he is cerebral in that way, and I think he draws more defensive because he just throws moon balls essentially, and he throws them in the right place. So I think I would guess that he has drawn more defensive pass interference calls than anybody else in the league. He's in a good situation. Chris Olave, resurgence of Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara when he comes back, Jamal Williams has good weapons. Juwan Johnson, the tight end. His coach, not great, but you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. He could have a resurgence here, and he has heart. Miles and miles of heart. This guy plays with his heart on his sleeve, very emotional. It's easy to root for him. So I'm hoping he does well. Derek Carr, number 14. Number 13, we got Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. This is a guy that plays opposite of the style that I typically like in a quarterback. However, he is the best, most composed running quarterback in the league. The way he runs is efficient and fast, and he knows when to go out of bounds and knows when to go down. He is what Russell Wilson was, but a little bit better than that in his cognizance of where he needs to be running wise. Exceptional. Really, 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 really good at that. And in fantasy, that is very valuable to have, especially if you play in those leagues that is 4 points for a passing touchdown instead of six. So he's going to get you rushing touchdowns. And he's on an offense where the running backs on that team, while Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman and Roshan Johnson are good, they're not elite. So he will get some of those goal line carries and will get some of those rushes. And his weapons, I'm a big fan of DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I mean, if Justin Fields can't get him the ball, I feel really bad for DJ Moore that he is such a great receiver that hasn't played with guys that know how to get him the ball. And I like Darnell Mooney. I think he's a great receiver as well. And by the way, they have Chase Claypool as a number 3 receiver. This guy was supposed to break out as the best receiver in Pittsburgh. He showed uh, glimpses of that. So the weapons are there. There's no excuse. Cole Kmet, there's no excuse. So Justin Fields, it's time to break out. I hope he worked on his passing game this offseason. Justin Fields, number 13. Number 12, we got a guy that I am higher on than most people, Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns. I understand everything that's happened to him in his career. It's unfortunate, and it seems a little unfair to me, to be honest with you. I know there's a lot of haters of this guy. I'm not a hater of this guy. He has MVP capability. We all saw that. We all saw that in Houston. He has QB acumen. He has elusiveness. He has fluidity. He knows how to play the position, knows how to find people. He is a great, great player that you can get at a great value because at the end of last year he hadn't played in like 2 years, and he came back and people were panning him because, well, I mean, what do you expect? You don't play for 2 years, you got to knock the rust off. But he played this preseason and he looked good. And he has Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones and the addition of Elijah Moore, who they're saying looks really good. And of course, David Njoku. And, one of the best running backs in the league in Nick Chubb. I think he's primed to have a good year. I think he's primed to start reclaiming that MVP form that he once had. And he could really ascend up this list. So, Deshaun Watson at number 12. At number 11, we got my guy, Geno Smith. Geno of the Seattle Seahawks. The resurgence of a lifetime, the comeback player of the year, the guy that got written off but didn't write back though. Geno. Amazing weapons. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Tight ends, not bad too. Will Dissly, Noah Fant, Cody Parkinson. Of course I know a lot about this team and this guy because this is my team, the team that I support. And Jake Bobo. Jake Bobo might be the number 3 receiver on this team because Jackson Smith and Jigba might be getting surgery. And also those great running backs, Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And I hope that Seattle's offensive line coming together this year. I think they can do okay. On defense, I don't know how well they'll do, but on offense, I think they can be special. And he showed that last year. The thing I like most about Geno is his reluctance to throw interceptions. He's one of the most careful quarterbacks in the league at that, along with, Aaron Rodgers. He's like on that level. He does take sacks. I understand that he's not perfect, and he has a little bit of inconsistency, but he is just some of the throws he made, he was, if you don't remember, he was an MVP candidate last year. Both comeback player of the year and MVP candidate. And I don't see how he can really fail with these types of weapons and that type of accuracy and that type of carefulness not to throw interceptions. I think he's going to do well for you in your fantasy leagues. He has a skill set that is good for fantasy leagues. Now, you know, if you're in a league that takes points away when they take sacks, then maybe not that great. He does throw the ball away as well, so if they dock points for that, then maybe not that great. But with everything else, with those, I mean, those three might be the best um, three-person receiver duo or three-person receiver collective in the league. So Geno Smith at number 11. At number 10 here, and you probably saw some of the colors before if you're watching on YouTube. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, that'd be amazing if you could subscribe on YouTube. I would really appreciate it. Number 10, we got Kirk Cousins, the classic quarterback here that is corny and funny and just fun to watch. Minnesota Vikings, really good player. I mean, the 1 p.m. king. We're talking about the 1 p.m. king here. You know, when he plays in prime time, completely different player, unfortunately. But really, I'm not even getting exaggerated. One of the best quarterbacks at 1 p.m. maybe we've ever seen. And, of course, he has Justin Jefferson, who is, in my opinion, the second best wide receiver in the league. Addition of Jordan Addison could be a great one. Alexander Madison, I think, is okay as well. KJ Osborne, I think, can be okay, too. Their tight end, TJ Hawkinson, very good player. Kirk Cousins, very, very solid. I mean, he's been, for years, a very, very good player at the precipice of being, top 5 if he really puts everything together. And he deserves to be top 10. I mean, there's no way you can tell me Kirk Cousins is outside of the top 10. So at number 10, Kirk Cousins. At number 9, we got Tua Tagovailoa, an incredibly, incredibly interesting case study. The one thing, and if you haven't seen this, go online and check this out. There is a video that shows what Tua, it reverses the video, all his highlights, and it shows what he would look like if he was right-handed, and he looks elite, exceptional. There's something about his mechanics that don't make him look like a great quarterback, but when you reverse it, it's weird how our mind does that. He has continued to increase his level of play throughout his career. And, of course, you have to think about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. And being in an offense with that genius, Mike McDaniel, that offensive genius, and they just seem to flow well together. And it's just a fun offense. And honestly, their running backs, Myles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed, shout out UW, they're great as pass catchers. And not even to mention Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, and I know maybe to have one guy. I mean, if you put all their running backs together, it would be a great, great running back. But I think they're better as pass catchers than they are as running backs. So when you put all that together and you account for his growth, and seems to be like a very smart guy, and of course, I hope that offensive line protects him this year because he had a lot of those scary concussions last year, and that's really why people are kind of down on him because of that. But he is excelling. He definitely is excelling in the league. Tua at number 9. And Ryan Clark, why are you calling him a fat stripper? Like, what's up with that? Keep that to yourself. Anyway, Dak Prescott, we got here at number 8. Okay, Dak Prescott could be a top 3 quarterback in my opinion, if not for all of those interceptions. I talk about this to Naif and Nomar Yusuf and all the Cowboys fans in my life, and there are many. He has a proclivity to throw based on where he thinks the receiver should be and doesn't have that thing in his brain to look elsewhere or take a sack or throw it away. He will throw it there. He makes those anticipation throws, and that's where a majority of his interceptions come from. And man, what you saw during this preseason and during training camp with Trevon Diggs really laying into him, calling him crap, and just trying to get into his head. This is a crossroads for Dak Prescott. How is he going to respond to that? I think Trevon Diggs is trying to do a tough love type of thing. But will it get to his head? Because he is earning a reputation now. And even guys like Naev have said this is a year that's going to be really important for Dak. Because if he doesn't excel this year, he doesn't improve, he doesn't cut down the interceptions, Dallas Cowboys are a big team with a big fan base. They're going to start looking elsewhere. If not, at the end of this season, the next season, and if not that, then maybe the season after that. But Dak Prescott was supposed to be a lifer with the Cowboys. And if he doesn't cut those interceptions out and have some success in the playoffs, then it could be the end of the road for him. But, of course, the reason why he's not number 8, if I haven't said his positives already, incredible. Has everything you want in a quarterback. The mechanics, the mobility, the acumen, all those great things. Really solid player. But cut down on the interceptions. Moving to number 7, right above him here, we got Jalen Hurts. I'm sure this is going to upset a lot of Cowboys fans. But another guy that I was low on when he got into the league because I thought he was just a runner essentially. Got his job taken by the guy 2 spots below him, Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, who I thought was the better pure quarterback. Jalen Hurts last year really, really surprised me. He has really gotten better year after year after year. It's a very impressive arc. Of course, he is a good runner, very solid runner, kind of like a Big Ben, Cam Newton type, very, stocky essentially, and that's how he made his name really in college football as a decent thrower, but like a really good runner. But he put it all together this year, taking advantage of having great weapons in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, another duo that are in contention for the best wide receiver duo in the league, and Dallas Goedert. And now you have great weapons at running back in DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, and even Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. They're all good. So this guy almost won a Super Bowl last year, and he was deserving of it. Now, can he keep this up? Is he going to continue to iterate upward? If he does, then he can be a great, great quarterback. He could. Well, he's not going to elevate to Patrick Mahomes or some of these other guys. But we don't know. We don't know what iterating up for him could look like. But, is this a plateau that he's reached, or can he continue to get better? But either way, extremely solid with extremely good weapons. Jalen Hurts at number 7. Number 6, we got Aaron Rodgers. This might be a shock to some people. I know on some lists this guy is outside the top 10 or into the top 15. But, I did mention earlier what I saw from him a little bit last year is he's lost that fastball a little bit. And he does some weird, crazy stuff during the offseason. Ayahuasca and sensory deprivation room, and just seems to be a very eccentric guy where football doesn't even seem to be that important to him. But he is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly talented. One of the best quarterbacks of all time, top 10. And he does not throw interceptions. If you watched our Greatest Quarterbacks of All Time podcast earlier this summer, the number of interceptions he has relative to how many passes he's thrown as an elite quarterback is, I think he might have the best ratio ever. So having that in addition to his mobility, in addition to his fight and kind of will to win in game, remove his personality. I know he can be kind of like a dick on the field, and his exceptional passing and great acumen as a quarterback, putting all those things together, he's incredible. And this situation now, he has Garrett Wilson. He has some of his other guys that he liked from Green Bay: Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Mecole Hardman, and a lot of running backs as well in Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook and Michael Carter and Izzy, complicated last name, and Zonovan Knight if he stays on this team, and good tight ends as well, and I think a good offensive line, and he has a great defense on this team. So the pieces are there for Aaron Rodgers to succeed. The only wild card is it's the Jets, and they're a terrible franchise. I'm sorry, Zeuser, but they've shown themselves to be a franchise that seems to be a little bit cursed, or a little bit like the New York Mets. So that's the wild card here. Moving on to number 5, we got Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is incredible the way he got better after getting rid of Urban Meyer. Really, that was the only bump in his entire football career, because at Clemson, he was one of the most touted quarterbacks of all time coming out of college. And on the level of Andrew Luck or John Elway, I mean, he's like top 3 in how much acclaim he had coming out of college. And he's starting to show it now. And he has a great quarterback coach in Doug Peterson. And, I talked about best wide receiver duos in the league, best wide receiver trios. When you go across his receiver platform, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, all 5 of those guys, and Travis, you can throw Travis Etienne in there, and even Tank Bigsby. All those guys of the 5 guys, the first 5 guys that I mentioned, seem like the same player to me, and they are all above average receivers. All of them. None of them are below average. And they all look the same. Well, Evan Ingram actually looks like a receiver to me. It doesn't even look like a tight end. So when you have that level of consistency, and you have the all-time great quarterback that Trevor Lawrence has been, or was in college, and has the potential to be in the NFL, you have a great recipe. And riding that momentum of that comeback in the playoffs last year against the Chargers, it's a recipe for, it could be something special for the Jaguars this year. And they added another piece on defense as well that's very good in the first round. I forget his name, but they have at all levels of the defense now. They're looking good. So Trevor Lawrence at number 5. Number 4, we got Joe Burrow here of the Cincinnati Bengals. Had a little bit of a tough offseason here where he injured his knee a little bit in non-contact. I don't think anybody touched him. He just kind of twisted his knee, stepped on it wrong. And I'm going to start with the negatives and then move into the positives with this guy. The reason why he's not at number 4, he could have been higher on this list, is he runs more than he should. There is no reason for him to run as much as he does. He should not be doing it. He doesn't need to do it. And he had a catastrophic season-ending knee injury in his first year in the NFL. Came back, went to the Super Bowl the next year. Came back and had an amazing, amazing season this past year. And I think they got far in the playoffs. I forget where they got exactly. But continues to run and expose himself in a way that elite quarterbacks should not be doing. So I am scared for him because of the fact that he does that. Everything else about him, amazing, amazing quarterback, composed, acumen, cool, mobile, has great receivers. Again, this is in contention for the best wide receiver trio in the league in T Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase, obviously. And Hayden Hurst is good. The running backs a little weak, Joe Mixon, and really who's behind him, I don't know. But one of the elites of the elites in the league and extremely fun to watch. So Joe Burrow at number 4. Number 3, Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills, a guy that, many perceive as the best quarterback in the league. He is a guy, elite athleticism, runs extremely well, and runs really like a running back. I mean, the way he is a guy that even though he doesn't really shy away from contact, the way he's built and the way he runs, uh, defenders fear him, especially defensive backs. And as a quarterback, one of the strongest arms in history, from what I understand. A lot of people, if you listen to a lot of quarterbacks throughout history and people that have studied the game, they say that Josh Allen has like a top 5 cannon of an arm in history, maybe even top 3. Really good weapons. Stephon Diggs, hopefully he's come out recently. He was like a little bit disgruntled earlier, but he's come out and really in full force embraced the Bills as his team very, very recently. So that's a good sign, and I think that's going to allow this team to do a little better. Gabe Davis, there's a lot of talk about him really ascending this year, and is it Khalil Shakir, their third receiver on his team? He's also very good too. In addition to those 2 tight ends they have now, they got Dawson Knox and I think is it Dalton Kincaid. They got one of the top tight ends in the league in the draft this year as a rookie. And of course, that's not to mention one of my favorite running backs, James Cook. And they got Damian Harris as well if they want to use him, if he stays healthy. So, ton of weapons, ton of potential. And, he battled Patrick Mahomes in that battle, I think last year or 2 years ago. They've been on the precipice of getting to a Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl. But the only thing that keeps him here at number 3 relative to some of these other guys is he throws picks. He's a little reckless, and sometimes at inopportune times. That's the only thing. It's not as much as a lot of these other quarterbacks, which is why he's number 3, but he can be a little bit reckless. Those are some of the memories I have of him being a little reckless, and he seems to cut it down year after year. So maybe if he continues to cut it down, he'll be even better. Josh Allen at number 3. At number 2, we got Justin Herbert. What a player. I mean, I will never forget that game that he had against the Raiders with the playoffs on the line. That is one of the greatest QB performances I have ever seen. And hopefully that sparks you to after this to go watch the highlights of that video. This guy is tenacious. He plays through big injuries. I think he played through like broken ribs or something else happened with his ligaments or bone. Exceptional player, great acumen, great mobility. Has really, really good weapons. Keenan Allen, one of the possession receiver par excellence. He has a legit number 1 guy as well, big receiver in Mike Williams. Austin Eckler is one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league for as long as he's on this team. Elijah Dotson is going to come on, and even if wherever Austin Eckler goes, Elijah Dotson is an amazing running back for this team. And he is primed to succeed. All throughout his life, even at Oregon, he was really good. By the way, of course, I hate Oregon as a Washington fan, but he's a lot better in the NFL than he even was at Oregon, and he was a top prospect at Oregon. So excited about the things that Justin Herbert can do here. But the reason why he's not number 1 is because there's a guy named Patrick Mahomes in the league. of the Kansas City Chiefs, and there is nobody like him in the league currently. And if you ask a lot of guys like Naif or whatever, they'll say they'll say he's the best quarterback of all time. I'm not quite there yet, but he is on that trajectory. I mean, you can't really deny the things that he does. Composed, athletic, does things with the football that it's like freaking Harlem Globetrotters type of stuff. Andy Reid is his coach. One of the best quarterback minds of all time. The best quarterback mind and offensive mind in the league currently. Has Travis Kelce, who is possibly the greatest tight end of all time. Has Isaiah Pacheco, who is a tremendous pass-catching back, who I'm a really, really big fan of Isaiah Pacheco. And he just makes the best of the receivers that he has, which at this point is fill in the blank. I don't know. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. I was actually a really big fan of Kadarius Toney. The way he plays actually is a little bit like Devontae Adams. If he puts things together, and he I don't know, his headspace is really weird. He can't really get his emotions together. Kadarius Toney as a player, but if he's able to do that, I think he can be a really great receiver and contribute well to this team. But Patrick Mahomes, multiple time MVP and Super Bowl winner, has only been in the league for 5 years, so he has a lot of upward mobility that he can do as well. But number one, Patrick Mahomes. So, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this top 32 quarterback ranking for the fantasy football season. Really looking forward to it. Fantasy football season starts soon. I hope this helps you in your draft. I hope you haven't drafted yet. I'm a big advocate of drafting really like on Labor Day, like after all the games are done, so you can see like, oh, are there any last minute injuries, last minute cuts, last minute trades, whatever. So I hope you guys are doing that as well. It's been fantastic doing this podcast and interacting with you guys on the social media platforms as well. I really, really do appreciate you guys listening. I'm not just saying that. I really do appreciate it. And there's a lot of pages you can go to for this type of stuff. But I'm glad that you're taking time to come here. And I hope that I can really help you guys in your leagues and just to have fun too. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe. That would be great. If you are listening on a podcast platform like Spotify, it would be great if you followed us and gave us a rating, leave a comment. Same thing for Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora. I can't think of any of the other ones. Let me know what podcast platform you're listening on. There's some other like kind of weird ones, Xero or something like that. You guys listen on some stuff. Let me know about them. And we're also on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok as well. It just jumped on TikTok. So any of those that you're on there as well, find us. And yeah, that'll do it. I think we'll move to wide receivers and tight ends next. It's been great doing this podcast. And until next time, have a fantastic day, football fans.